what were we saying now? Your boys?
Your boys.
Your boys.
Your boys, the bullshit buddies.
Your boys, the bullshit.
It's not your.
Yep.
Yeah. Your boys.
Your boys,
Your boys.
the bullshit buddies.
Wait, I don't know if you say duh.
I can throw my own
flavor. You put your spin on it.
Yeah.
Personalize that shit. Yeah.
Sure. Anyways, we're coming to you this week from Las Vegas, heart of debauchery and a lot of leaflets with naked women.
Wait, is it debauchery or
debauchery?
Duh.
Shut the fuck up.
Put your flavor on it.
That's what she's.
Okay.
That's
what that Bunny Ranch was pretty good.
Anyways, a lot of leaflets with naked women with like stars that are much too small to be covering their tits on there.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out why I'm already
really
in the house of ill repute. Like, why would you put that on there? Just show the boobs.
Anyway, so we've been sampling some of the many fine prostitutes available in Las Vegas, and that was just to bone us up, you could say, for a conversation about prostitution this week. So, as I'm sure most of you know, prostitution is not a legal practice in many states, although, as people have often said, it's the oldest profession, i.e. swapping resources, in this case cold hard cash, or some of these fine establishments even take credit card for sexual services from women. And
so many opportunities for a joke we missed there.
What?
Cold hard cash and credit card. I know they're old jokes. They're tired jokes.
Yeah, let's not trod old ground. Anyways, it's always kind of baffled me that prostitution is illegal anywhere, because it seems like if you have a right to anything, it's to your body and to the services that you provide. Like, I could kind of get why the government would want to regulate on, I don't know, you want to use your body to build someone else a house. Got to make sure that the house is stable, that it's not going to collapse in an earthquake or catch fire too easily or something like that. And I appreciate the government regulations around prostitution too, but banning people from being able to do something like use their body to build someone a house. I mean, just basic trade of, I can do things that you want me to do.
Yeah.
Pay me for them, and I'll do them. The idea that the government's banning that on such a fundamental level as prostitution kind of baffles me, gotta say. And in our own state of California, prostitution's legal. You cannot pay a woman to have sex with you. That's an illegal act. But if you pay her to fuck someone and film it and then put it on the internet, that is legal. Right. So, like I said, just kind of weird laws. It just kind of blows my mind that it's illegal anywhere at all. I don't know if you have any thoughts on
that. Not really, honestly. It's one of the weird. I think, though. All right. So if I was gonna say that there's this myth that female sex workers are most likely victims of sexual abuse, and that then legalizing prostitution would be like, these are just arguments that I've heard, but I guess like supporting their like, I guess the idea is instead of somebody who was sexually abused and became a prostitute, instead of them going to therapy and getting help, they're gonna become a prostitute. And that
prostitution's legal. Why can't you do both?
Right.
Because I don't know what the percentages are. I would give it I feel generous 60% maybe of prostitutes have experienced some kind of. I mean, just looking at how many women, period, have experienced some kind of sexual abuse in their past. Seems like prostitutes might be higher, so I'll tack on
but then porn too, like
to that.
Are porn stars all sexually abused? No. Is it higher? It's probably higher. Even if just for the reason that they now don't give a fuck, like, about what their family thinks of them. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah, it's got to be a you do probably to some extent have to not give too much of a fuck. Actually, no.
Do you need to pause? Finish
no,
that up?
No,
okay.
We're good. Actually, I have in kind of my extended family, I have both sex workers and strippers, and this would be in Oregon, and there's like one male cousin in particular who's like the only one, and there's like several sex workers in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And he says he litigiously avoids any of the bars that are also strip lounges, because at any point he might walk in and see his cousin or up on the stage, doesn't know where they're working, doesn't really want to know, just anywhere that women are taking their clothes off, he's not going to go. So yeah, I do take your point that, but I don't really see how it's supporting child abuse, you know. And then so let's say it's 60. So you're going to ban that 40% who are in it for other reasons from being able to do it because somehow you're supporting the 60% that were sexually abused. I don't get that at all.
I think really what it is just an old law from our religious past, and we've moved on, and so because at one time porn was illegal,
right?
At one time sodomy was illegal. I think it still is in Texas, but it's not really enforced. How could you? It's just one of the things that we kind of got lost as we progressed forward. And it's like the weird, it's
well, I think some of the puritanical kind of Christian values seeping into...
I don't think it's easily. It's going to be easy to
I was actually in a debate recently, and I was looking up some like age of consent stuff. Mm-hmm. And dude, like the age of consent laws in many Western nations were like 10 to 14.
Yeah.
Until like 100 years ago.
You mean like Europe,
like mid 1800s? Also, the United States. The United States changed their consent laws. I was looking at a lot of numbers, but I think it was from like 12 up to like 16 because they were worried about epidemics of child prostitution.
Right.
So it almost kind of seems like further back, maybe not quite so much of a problem. And I'm not a history buff, but some kind of like the conservative bent on these things almost kind of seems recent, at least in terms of global history.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think with consent laws, though, it's not exactly the greatest parallel, because you're talking about, like, you can be conservative in the colonial days of America, and you can be 12 and, needing to father a child because you're going to die in your 30s.
Actually, that's also a bit of a myth that I came across recently. A lot of times the low life expectancies are done on averages that are basically include infant mortality.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they like if you lived past like 5,
right,
you had a good chance of living to like 60.
Okay.
In the past, but the problem is that it was majorly skewed because a lot of kids and mothers, for that matter, died in childbirth or died very young.
Right.
So it kind of threw back. So you get this whole like, well, people only live to 40, and it's like, no, that's not true. If you live past 5, you probably made it to 60.
Yeah.
But on average, if you factor in all the kids that died in childbirth, then you end up with this 40-year-old average. So,
right.
Which kind of it blew my conception. I don't exactly know how credible it is, but it seemed like it was demonstrated across several of the websites that I checked. Anyways, neither here nor there.
Okay, sorry. That was going to be a perfect segue, but go ahead.
Anyways, neither here nor there. So yeah, I mean, I just kind of almost, I don't know if I quite go so far as constitutional, but I don't get why anyone has the right to be saying you can't fuck someone for money. And it also kind of seems like that's a lot of what arrangements are in general anyways.
Yeah.
Certainly a lot of the dating scene, I don't look for one like this. I think a lot of guys don't, but some do, where the girl's not going to put out unless they bring them to dinner and buy them something and take them shopping and and whatever. Isn't that just kind of at its base form prostitution? Like, so what? It's like you need to give them the gift card, not the cold hard cash. You need to give them. It needs to be flowers and a $300 purse, and not $300 cash and the $20 for flowers or whatever.
I don't necessarily agree with that. That like dating is, prostitution, because
No, not all dating.
No, not all dating, but like even just let's say, were you gonna say that like almost any like arrangement is let's say goods for sex, especially for the male to female. It's do you have a job? Can you provide? Okay, then I will reproduce with you. You know,
kind of. So I feel like that's decreasing fairly drastically in modern society.
Right.
But my point is, so police would be looking for hookers standing on the street corner, at least in California, selling tricks for money.
Mm-hmm.
But they would not be looking.
Isn't that cute that we call it tricks? Show me your
turning tricks. Yeah.
Turning tricks. Oh, I thought it was Johns. It's Johns and tricks.
Johns are tricks are what you do, and Johns are the clientele.
Oh, I thought the tricks is what she did for the John.
That's what. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what she. Yeah,
it's a service. Anyways, but so what's the difference really though between giving a girl a $300 purse for sex for the chance at sex, I guess, as opposed to $300 for guaranteed sex, which she could then go spend on that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I just think with the dating,
not the strongest point.
I think where that kind of falls apart a little bit, at least, is prostitution is not for procreation. It's just to fulfill a biological need.
Most sex isn't for procreation nowadays.
Wait, no. But I mean, like, there's, you can buy a girl a $300 purse that you're dating, and you could have sex with her that night. But that hopefully won't be the last time you see her. Hopefully you'll build a relationship. You'll be in it to, like, not to use like a Christian platitude, but like be in it together. And there's more to it than just turning a trick because she got a purse from you. You know what I mean?
Why? I guess, I mean, I'm not necessarily expecting you to furnish this answer from a point that you actually believe, but why is it illegal?
I can't say why it's illegal.
Why,
just, yeah, it makes no sense for it to be illegal.
I'm just kind of drawing a bit of a comparison between, like, we seem to accept some other kinds of forms of prostitution.
Right.
I mean, gold diggers might be kind of looked down upon, but nobody's arresting them.
Right, exactly.
Right? But somebody who's doing that same thing just for cold hard cash, and I mean, a lot of hookers actually do have regular clientele, because Johns get very connected to certain hookers a lot of times.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily till death to us part, but it's not just a one time thing.
I think there's a thing. Anytime a politician's full of shit is because they're going to say, well, it's for the children, because children are something that nobody will ever question. And a lot of the argument I heard was, do you really want your young son or daughter to view this as a viable career option? Maybe that might be the best argument, is that, no, I don't think any mother or father hopes that their child fulfills all their dreams, and that dream of becoming a prostitute is fulfilled. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
all right, so I get that argument, but on the flip side of that, I mean, this is particularly true in my state where prostitution is illegal. Some people choose to break that norm and still do it anyways. When I was younger, I was really hard up for cash. I was working minimum wage jobs, 3 of them. I was living on my own since I was 18. I was having a really hard times making ends meet, and I engaged in illegal activities without going into too much detail, essentially theft and drug dealing to supplement my own income.
Right.
And I knew that there were legal risks involved there. I knew that it wouldn't be necessarily... By that same token, I don't think any mother wants their child to grow up and be a drug dealer.
Right.
Or a thief. But I did that to supplement my income because it was more financially viable than what I was doing for legal work at the time. But that was a choice on my part, because I wasn't flipping hamburgers at McDonald's or anything, but I looked at my current options, said I can make more money doing this. That's true for a lot of women too. I mean, you do hear some horror stories for sure, but a lot of, I mean, I mentioned that I had some family who did essentially sex work. A lot of it was just stripping, but like, they're putting their way through college right now,
right,
on those kind of wages, because they can make more taking off their top and dancing than they can flipping burgers at McDonald's or what have you.
Right.
So they choose that option. But it is a choice on their part to engage in that. And the thing that you have to realize is that that's going to happen everywhere, regardless of what the law says. And this is one of the stronger points on why I think prostitution should be legalized, is that there's no regulation on black market trade of these kind of things. So there are prostitutes in California, plenty of them. I came from a much crappier area about a year ago, and literally drove by them every single day on my way to and from work. Prostitutes just hanging out on my corner.
Right.
Those women don't have, they have pimps who are more likely to abuse them. Pimps are more likely to get them, fucked up on certain substances. Right. They don't have the refusal of service option nearly as often as women who are doing it legally do. They're more likely to get killed. They're more likely to get raped. They're more likely to get STDs when there's less enforcement of not only birth control but STD prevention. Right. So more likely to end up with kids. Just like no way, it's still going to happen, but no way that you look at it is it better to have it be illegal than legal.
Oh no, there's no way it's better to. It's clearly better illegal, or it's clearly better legal. Just the options of, even just looking at it from the options of just the prostitute herself.
Yeah.
Not to mention the client, but just the prostitute. It's a clear. I was gonna say line. I don't know what the fuck I was gonna say that. It's clearly so much better for her or him, but mostly her.
Like I said, if you acknowledge it's gonna happen, why not get the government involved? It's kind of the similar argument to the legalization of marijuana. Like, it's clearly happening.
Well,
we're clearly not going to stop people from smoking weed. We're not going to stop people from growing weed. We're not going to stop this huge market from happening. Right. So why not get the government in on it and have them... First of all, it's good for them because they get to tax it then and make money off of it. And they can funnel some of that back into regulation of the industry and make sure that people... It's not like there's a huge epidemic of this, but, weed being sold at clubs is not laced or whatever. I mean, again, I've never encountered laced weed from street dealers in my life, but... there's a kind of a certain quality assurance that comes with having something be a government regulated, like we mentioned building houses earlier. Right? You kind of don't want just random builders building up buildings willy-nilly with no respect for codes. Some of those codes are a little bureaucratic and ridiculous, but I'd rather live in a building that had those than not. And I'd rather fuck a prostitute who is in a legally regulated industry than not. I feel safer. She's going to feel safer. She's going to make sure that she gets, paid better for what whole fucking laundry list of reasons.
Well, also just imagine if America legalized prostitution, the home of the international corporation. You could, like IBM, International Business Machines. You could have a company, IPS, International Prostitute Services, and you would go to a large corporate building. I don't know. That was kind of funny. Just a high rise in downtown New York City. Just, I just thought that was kind of funny. But it should be legal because it's going to be safer. It's going to be cleaner.
But so one of the better we're reiterating points we already made, but one of the arguments that I've heard against prostitution, and this does tend to come a lot from the feminist sphere of things, is that basically all prostitutes are abused women in one way or another. Not in terms of like past sexual abuse, which you had mentioned, but that like women don't get into this unless they're trafficked, or unless they're hooked on drugs, or unless they're groomed for that kind of service.
But we know that's not true.
We know it's not true, and further, I would also posit that anybody who's in that predicament is not actually a prostitute. They're essentially a sex slave.
Right. Yeah.
If you fucking abduct women from Eastern Europe and illegally bring them into the United States and get them hooked on drugs and tell them that you're gonna fucking kill their family if they don't like serve 20 johns a day, like that's sex slavery. That's not prostitution.
Right.
And everyone can agree that what the fuck is happening there needs to stop and be regulated and not regulated, needs to be criminally prosecuted and needs to be stamped out. But that also kind of ties back to the earlier point of the kind of the best mechanism to do that is to legalize it.
Because then you have an HR department.
Exactly.
You have, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and you shine sunlight on it, and you go, okay, this is, now we all know what's up. So, were you trafficked from Romania to America to do this? No. Okay, do you have any problem? You know, you could go over point by point.
Right.
And if it turns out that they were trafficked, then you have them in a place where they can not be trafficked. You'd be like, oh shit, you were trafficked.
Let's get you out of
this situation. That isn't gonna be solved by keeping it illegal.
Yeah. But I just kind of wanted to qualify that just to head off anyone who's thinking, there's so many dirty aspects of the industry, and it's like, yeah, but a lot of those aren't genuine prostitution.
Yeah.
They're basically sex slavery, and if you want to eliminate those factors, the best mechanism you could go about.
You know what I was actually just thinking though too. I think one of the reasons why it is illegal is because there's a perceived possibility of increased abortions when you have a class of worker who is dedicated to being a sex worker. So like you'd have more baby killing.
I knew that you wanted to get to this at some point.
Well, no, but I was just thinking like I wonder if these are. I actually legitimately wonder if these are actually kind of connected.
I've never heard anyone make that argument.
I haven't heard it, but
I can
would it stand to
reason?
reason? Yeah,
I can understand the hypothetical that you don't like abortion and therefore any industry that's basically baby making in sort, but you don't want the babies, you just want the fun part before that. I could see how that would be a somewhat valid argument in their summation. Like I said, I've never actually heard anyone make that claim that the reason that they oppose abortion is because the reason they oppose prostitution is because
well, let me clarify the point. It stands to reason that if you are, as a country, not sure where you stand on abortion, and that it's not totally socially accepted, if you have an entire group of legalized workers who will probably need that service at one time or another.
Well, but again, how do you guarantee that the Johns are wearing condoms? You don't.
Yeah, but I mean, condoms can break.
They can.
Things can happen. That condom is 99% effective.
Okay, so but in order to stop that from being a problem at all, the dude who's fucking a prostitute in the back of his car in a junkyard somewhere while her pimp's operating this whole operation illegally has a much harder time assuring that guy is going to wear a condom at all.
Right, I
so
understand
again,
that.
I feel like you can crush that argument. Like if you're concerned about abortion,
right? Well,
unless you're denying that prostitution happens because it's illegal, which is obviously bullshit. You have to acknowledge that it is happening. The best way to cut down on the number of abortions that are going to be happening is going to be to have these women in safer environments where condoms are available and condoms are required.
What I would say though, the differing, and maybe I didn't make it clear enough, was that it would be a state-sanctioned legal right. Like, you need to have an abortion. You know what I mean?
As a result,
like right now, we can kind of keep it all in a dark area.
Abortion or prostitution?
Both. Whereas if you had, like, okay, let me say this: if you have a company, IPS, who is providing prostitution services, and let's say they're if they employ in America, I don't know, 20,000 workers, just that small. If 2% of those workers at one point or another need a abortion, then it could be perceived that the easy access to abortion by these sex workers could be like a state-sanctioned, I'm just trying to think of the word.
You're on your own, buddy.
The opposite of condemnation.
Accepted?
Like an accepted solution. Condoned, like, by the state that, yes, okay, of course you're a sex worker, you need an abortion. And then I'm pro-abortion, by the way, but I just think as far as, like, the Christian right is concerned, and this is where they really gets hung up. Because now you need legalized abortion. Legalized abortion isn't just a quiche little thing that everybody talks about, and of course it's legal, but it's now you need it, and it needs to be sanitary, and I mean sanitary in the sense that we don't view it as a negative.
Well, I'd say again, going back to the legal side of this, is that if you have people trafficked in to be prostitutes from Romania, they're a lot less likely to have access to birth control too. So if you want to have sex workers who, I don't know, perhaps are required to be on birth control as a result of their, I don't know if you even want to go that far, but if they're like legal citizens participating in a legal activity, they're more likely to be able to have access to the birth control, which is a lot more effective than condoms.
It's probably lower. It's definitely probably lower. I just think that's as Americans, that's something that we would have to confront, and it would make us go hard one way or the other. It's either a complete yes or
It'll make you go hard, Jeff.
Shit.
This whole issue makes me go hard.
Yeah. It would either be a complete yes, abortions are fine, prostitution is fine, or it would be a no, where we currently are, which is abortions are probably not okay. Again, I think they're okay, and prostitution is not okay. They're tied together, and so legalization of one would require the unquestioned legalization of the other. Here's my thought on abortion, though, notwithstanding the debate we just had about making it totally legal and prostitution. I think abortion right now is kind of where it needs to be. With it's accessible, but it also gives pause. The current thought on it gives pause. Should I have this? To where the people that are needing it are getting it, and the people that maybe should reconsider it are reconsidering.
So we'll reach a minor point of disagreement here.
Okay.
I don't think that there should be any social stigma around it at all.
Okay. Why?
Because essentially, okay, so I should also qualify that this mainly pertains to earlier abortions. There are times when legally they're not really allowed to abort kids at certain points, right? Like if you could basically pull a thing out and stick it in a tube and give it a few months and it would be a person. That's like if you're doing that, you're killing a living thing.
Right.
But for a lot of the development and a lot of the point when people get abortions, it's basically just a clump of cells. Like, and people like to point at random. Usually, the things that they like to point towards is it has fingers or it has a heart, because those are the two things that kind of strike a chord with people. Well, I have fingers and I have a heart, but you notice that they never say it has a spleen, right?
Right.
It has a liver. It's developed an asshole. Like, you notice that
I shit out of my asshole.
Yeah, they never say that because it doesn't strike that same kind of chord of like, oh, I can empathize with that thing as a living being.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if it's to the point where it doesn't really have any, if it's to the point where it doesn't have a brain at all, or if it doesn't have sufficient brain function, and I'm not talking about like a mentally handicapped person, I'm talking about like its brain is literally like 1,000 cells. I mean, it's just not. Nothing's firing in there.
Right.
It's not really a person. You're not really killing a person. You're stopping that process before it becomes a person.
Right.
And if you killed that person once they're developed, I'd have a problem with it. But if you're just stopping that process before it gets there,
Yeah.
I mean, we were just having a aside during the break about somebody says they've had 20 abortions and it seems like, god damn, like that seems really high, and I get that same kind of visceral reaction that you do, but assuming that she had them all when it was still like a zygote,
Yeah.
what's the problem?
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, because I think like the argument you hear the most is life begins at conception, right? And and that's mainly a Christian argument that that is when God breathed the soul into the baby, presumably through the man's penis, or through the woman's own breath, one of those two.
Something with ribs, maybe.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, if you
God, it gets weird.
What if breathing into existence was a ejaculation like analogy?
Huh?
Yeah.
Normally I just grunt like a water buffalo when I'm coming, but I think
breathing,
in the future I'm gonna have to go.
Yeah. Don't mention Cenk Uygur.
What?
The water buffalo from the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. That seems to be the reoccurring argument that life begins at conception. Okay, let's say life does begin at conception, but let's quantify it. It is non-aware. It has no self-consciousness. No, it's not aware of its existence. So if you're going to make that argument that it's wrong to abort at that time, then killing a fly is wrong.
I would say
going
maybe
hunting.
more wrong than killing.
Right.
Yeah, you gotta hope that all these anti-abortion advocates are very staunch, like third Dan vegans.
Right.
If they're
third Dan, is that what they call them? I thought it was just. Yeah.
I think I got it from a Simpsons reference.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
He
I don't need anything with shadows.
A shadow. Yeah, he only ate like moss that grew within like 3 feet of him or something. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What constitutes life? I guess is what I'm saying. Life as we sit here and talk about what constitutes life. To me, I think it constitutes more your self-awareness, your ability to realize that there's a beginning to your life and an end to your life, because only with that awareness can you experience existential pain.
Okay. I feel like the slippery slope argument opens up when you start trying to say things like that to mentally handicapped people or to vegetables.
That's definitely true. It's not a perfect argument.
It's tough, and it's tough to. It's where the fuck do you draw that line, right? I mean, so I don't know. Somebody who suffers from severe autism or dementia, are they alive by that definition? Do they really have a concept of who they are or where they are, or that they're going to die, or that they? Certainly, those people suffer existential pain, but but yeah, it gets kind of sticky, which is why I'm more of a fan of nipping it at the bud, in the sense of it literally doesn't have a functioning brain.
Right.
I can point to like
it's
the 20 cells that will become a brain if you give it enough time, but if you cut it off before that point, or way the fuck before that point, when the thing is literally. A lot of abortions are smaller than period clots.
Right.
Like, that's not a person. I don't fucking care. Like, that's not a person. That's not a person any more than me clipping off my toenail as a person. Like, there might be the same amount of cells in there, but it's not a cognitive. And again, like I'm kind of adverse to using the term cognitive. Like, I don't really know exactly at what point we should be pulling the plug on vegetables, or I mean, certainly anyone with autism or dementia deserves care, but I'm more of a fan of, if you want to get an abortion, I don't think there should be any social stigma about it, so long as you get it early enough.
I agree.
If you're at the point where there's I mean, I think our legal restrictions on abortion prevent you from getting an abortion at any point where you could basically, like I said, pull the baby out and give it certain special care, and it would essentially grow up to be a normal, healthy person. That's fucked up. You shouldn't be doing that. At that point, you are killing a life. But I mean, conception? Fuck no. It's at the point of conception, it's literally 2 cells. Like, that's all that it is. You have an egg and you have a sperm cell, and that's it.
Right.
If you could kill it at that point, I mean, some of the conservatives are opposed to just birth control in general, like condoms, because condoms are interfering with God's will. Fuck that. That's a fucking stupid ass argument. I'm not.
I think though, with the conservative argument on this, it's a little suspect because, and by conservative I mean Christian right.
I was using shorthand.
Yeah. There was a period of time where if you know, of course you read the Bible, but remember the story of some guy, can't remember his name, spilling his seed on the ground.
Yeah.
Why was that an abomination? Because at that period of time, actually, and I learned this from somebody who I used to work with who studied to become a Catholic priest. At that period of time, they believed that what the guy was shooting out of his dick hole was a fully formed baby, and that it would incubate and grow.
Larger.
Exactly, yeah.
Kind of like those little things where you like a pellet and you stick it in the water and it grows into like a little dinosaur.
Yeah, like the magic dinosaurs. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah.
So Christians were actually way ahead of their time, at least in that regard.
Christians were way ahead of their time in making toys. But that was, if that's the start of the argument against abortion, which it was, even against any sort of ejaculation that didn't explicitly involve ejaculating to a woman, so masturbation and all that shit. If you started your argument on a faulty pretense, then we need to reassess your argument.
Because we know better now.
Right.
Yeah. I also have to wonder, I feel like any Christian dude back in the day at that point in time and thinking who didn't beat off either must have massive blue balls or was a fucking liar. Like, I don't know, man.
I mean, can you think of a year
That I didn't come
that you didn't beat off?
since I was like 12? No.
Yeah, no.
No.
Yeah.
I can't even conceptualize that.
Yeah.
Fuck, when I discovered beating off...
Can you think of a week? Can you think of a period of 16 hours?
16 hours maybe. I don't know about the week.
Well, you're on vacation around family. You don't know
That's
exactly
what I was thinking,
doing.
actually.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
I've been stuck in cabins and shit before
Yeah,
with
for
people.
sure.
Yeah.
But at the end of that fucking, like...
Oh, yeah, then I have a spree.
Yeah, it's coming out of your eyeballs, yeah.
So, yeah, I do agree with your point. If you're going to make this whole argument that life begins at conception essentially based on false ideas that were propagated by people 2,000 years ago, you're in the wrong. You need to revise your position.
You might not be
Life
totally
doesn't-
in the wrong, but we need to really go from a scientific perspective what is actually happening here. And that's what they're not willing to do.
We need to ask them what do you really think constitutes life? Because if you think that, I mean, just individual sperm cells, let's just stick with that. Because at least,
Did you know they can smell?
At least
Like, that was pretty recent. They believe now pretty strongly that sperm cells have a sense of smell. And that's how they find the egg.
I always imagined it was like a rigorous training boot camp going on in my balls.
I was hoping.
Where they're just planning and strategizing.
Yeah, that's a nice...
I was picturing little
yeah.
pop-up targets
Yeah.
shaped like egg cells where they're just like
headbutting
just
it, yeah.
headbutting the fuck out of them all day. But
now it's more of a
my
hip,
own
well, I was going
private
to say
delusion.
it's more of a hippie thing with smelling salts and just yes.
Fuck, dude. Anyways, so if you actually want to make the argument that just sperm cells like are a waste if they're seed upon the ground or whatever, that on itself doesn't have any potential to become a human being. I could see a slightly more viable argument if you're saying once the sperm is actually connected, given the right circumstances, given that the adequate scientifically based medical care is actually going to be able to carry that baby through term and birth it, it will become a human being at some point later. But if your position is that sperm is a human being and therefore jacking off is wrong because it's murder, you're just wrong. Like, that's unequivocal. So then you want to go into, okay, once it's connected with the egg cell, to what extent is that murdering a human being? I don't know, man, but at the egg connected to sperm to me seems less complex than my toenail, which I cut off all 10 of them on a pretty regular basis. And it might have become a longer toenail if I didn't do that,
right.
given the right circumstances. But I do it anyways, and I'm removing biological tissue from my body.
Well, not to mention every time you take antibiotics.
Well, now we're getting into a whole discussion of, do you want to interfere with God's will? And I actually have a
do,
fucked
because
up
God's will kind of
personal
sucks
story.
dick.
This is a friend of a friend thing, but when my dad was growing up, he knew a kid who had an amputated arm, and essentially what happened was that kid went over to a friend's house for like, I think it was like a week or 2 weeks or something like that, and parents were out of town. Can you take care of our kid? And the kid cut his arm on a rusty nail or something in the backyard and got an infection, and the mother was a staunch believer in God's will. You don't interfere with God's will. If something happens, you don't start taking medicine to fuck with that. And basically the infection got so bad that they had to amputate it from the elbow down. So yeah, poor fucking, obviously the parents were a little pissed. But yeah, I mean, like I said with the whole vegan point, if you want to be anti-abortion, you better damn well be vegan. You also better damn well not take antibiotics or get any kind of advanced medical care. If you get tuberculosis, shit, that sucks. You're going to have to deal with that because that was God's will. Because if you believe that everything is what it will be in the future because that's what God has decided it's going to be, then you got to kind of play that across the board.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get typhoid, fuck the immunizations. God decided that.
Yeah.
If you're going to say you can't intervene in the natural processes, not natural, divine processes of what God wants, You need to believe that across the board, and I don't think
Yeah.
that most people who are anti-abortion do.
It seems to be a lot of relinquishing of responsibility too. You know, it's like, okay, do we agree that sometimes killing babies
It's not killing babies, though. I hate that term.
Well, what
what if it's a zygote?
No, I mean to say like
What if it's literally like a period.
right,
clump,
but saying
like,
it in a reactionary term is intentional. Do we agree that killing potential life, let's say, is sometimes justified? Now when we ask that question, if we don't divert to God and say it's God's will, we have to take responsibility for whatever decision that we decide to make.
All right. What if you decide not to have kids at all?
Right.
There's potential in you.
Right.
Well,
that's why
creating
Catholics are
kids.
against birth control.
Yeah, but I mean, what if I just decide not to fuck, not to have kids?
Right.
But there's still potential.
But the Bible would tell you
Yeah.
that for masturbating, you're wrong because you're killing life.
Well, that's why I'm not a Christian.
Right.
Just on that fucking basis, right
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Anyway, so abortions.
Beating off is nice.
Let's
do you know
do
how
it.
many more women have been managed to please because you just rub one out real quick before
Oh
you...
yeah. Because
Yeah.
you're in it for the long haul now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, dude.
You're not gonna.
Any young men who are listening, the best dating advice I can give you if you're open to get laid that evening is to rub one out. For two reasons, actually. One, if you've already rubbed one out, it's not your dick thinking for you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking rationally,
Right.
and it's not just this constant, like, dick wants to get wet, dude, just
Right.
do whatever it needs to get wet. That's a huge boon. But then if you actually manage to get to the point of getting laid, you can last for, an hour.
Yeah, and unless you're incredibly unhealthy, I mean, all right. So you
Also, eat pineapple.
yeah,
Lots of pineapple.
just trust us on that.
Just
one.
fruit
dude,
in
and
general.
smoke less because that
than
has
we
an effect.
do.
Yeah, but if you do smoke, eat more pineapple.
Eat even
eat
more
a lot
pineapple,
more
yes.
fruit. Even like gummy bears works. Like,
Really?
Yeah, dude. Any kind of like sugar. Like obviously the best is natural fruits, but yeah, gummy bears will work.
In a pinch.
In a pinch. I was gonna fucking say
Okay,
like,
so just draw it back to the main point. I don't think that there should be a stigma around abortions so long as they're before a certain period of the pregnancy. I mean, you stated like your main point was I think that it's at a good point where it's available to people who need it, but there's a certain amount of stigma that prevents people from getting it too often.
I wasn't
And we
thinking of like early term. I was thinking just in general. I totally agree with you on early term.
okay,
Yeah.
but I mean, if we can agree, maybe we need to draw back when people can get abortions. I mean, when the
Sure.
the statute of limitations on when you can get an abortion is.
Statute of limitations.
I'm throwing in legal terms to try to sound intelligent here, man.
Yeah. What if the all right? What is it? Third trimester? Well, how many trimester? I don't know. Fucking.
I figure I'm gonna brush up all of this when my girlfriend's pregnant.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. All right, let's just put it in like month terms, and these might not be correct, but 9 months to a baby. Let's say that right now it's 3 months to have an abortion. Maybe that's too late. Maybe you need to drop it down to a month and a half or 2 months.
Right.
Fine.
Yeah.
Drop it down then.
See, I'm more in favor of that kind of stuff, but I do feel like there should be some effort to remove the stigma of your stopping a life, and I mean, we kind of touched on this during the break, but just the idea that women are hesitant to get it at all because, I mean, as you mentioned, like when a woman gets pregnant, she has this kind of natural reflex to want to protect the baby. But you also have to wonder how much of that is socially constructed and how much of it's socially
I don't
construed,
think
how
much
much
of
a
it
social
can be.
stigma.
I
mean, to the where she literally, okay, let's just say she's at the point where she just missed her first period.
Okay.
Is she having maternal instincts at that point that want to protect that baby, or is it the socially constructed idea that the fact that she missed her period means that at some point in the future she's going to have a baby, therefore that's why she's adverse to wanting to get an abortion?
Okay.
And I kind of have to wonder how many women who really probably should get abortions don't, because there's this socially stigmatized idea around it that, well, that's a life.
Mm-hmm.
That's the baby. You don't want to be a baby killer. And it's like, no, it's a fucking clump of... Like, at the point when you miss your first period, that is a clump of cells. It's
right.
I mean, we're clumps of cells too.
Right.
But we're thinking, we're talking, we're discussing these things.
Like,
this thing is going to look like somebody just threw some blood at the wall. That's literally all that it is. Like,
it's not going to have the epic Viking beard that we both have. Or I more than you, but... I
have a better haircut, though.
Fuck up. No, you're right. Like, maybe if she missed her first period and there was no stigma, she might conceivably go, okay, shit, let me just go make sure that I'm pregnant and go to the abortion clinic, and if I am, I'm just going to go get this taken care of. Yeah, no, I agree with that, yeah.
I want it to be almost like I want the legal restrictions to be based on whenever the fuck we decide that it's actually a life. Mm-hmm. But I want the social stigma around it to completely evaporate.
I agree with
that.
To
the point where it's I don't want the idea that a zygote is a baby to be clouding a woman's judgment when it comes to, can I realistically care for this kid?
Well, folks.
Or I'm in
yeah.
No, I'm not wrapping up here.
Okay. I was going to say, we're not the feminist buddies.
I'm plowing on.
We're the feminist buddies.
I'm not.
We don't want to, yeah. I agree with that, though. It shouldn't cloud the woman's judgment to, again, it's about options. You have this many options available to you. You can have the baby, you can abort it, or you have this much time to think about it.
Or you got to put them up for adoption after going through all
Actually,
that.
There was an interesting thing. That shit doesn't work. There was in the 1950s, I think it was. They had these adoption clinics where women who were pregnant and were wanting an abortion, rather than get an abortion, they could live in this adoption clinic. They would have the baby, and then they would work to provide for themselves and the baby until the baby was adopted. Guess what? It was a fucking horrible solution. Didn't work at all. The women became attached to the babies. Not only did they have to work in weird jobs, it was basically like a house of abuse is what it came down to. And then they would get attached to the baby, but they're like, no, you said, because it's a fucking business, you said you were going to put the baby up for adoption. You can't have the baby anymore. We're taking the baby from you.
Well, even just
the other solution though was so dirty that it's not a solution.
What, just dropping off?
You drop off on the church doorstep,
dude. Legit. Actually, I was just in SF recently, and I don't know why the fuck this is the first time that I've ever seen that, but I saw a sign that was just like a person placing a baby down in front of it was on a firehouse. It was a sign. Mm-hmm. And I went and looked that shit up, and it means that you can basically just abandon babies on the doorstep of that firehouse, and I'll figure it out. I was just kind of like, what the fuck? Anyways,
really? That's like a law.
There's a sign that says, there's on the fucking firehouse, this is a place where you can just drop off your unwanted children, and we'll get it into adoption care. But that's not a great solution. Do you really want a kid? I've known kids who went through foster care, and they've grown up to be well-adjusted kids, but I also don't know any of them who would really wish that existence of living in foster homes, living at orphanages, and not having parents, not really having anyone to care for them, just being around a bunch of fucking other... I don't know any of the friends that I had who I've discussed this with who would say that that's a great way to kick off life. And if you have the option to nip that life at the bud before it's even a life, why not take that option? And again, to bring this back to the prostitution argument, any opposition to prostitution on the basis that I think you quoted 2% or whatever the fuck it's going to be are likely to get pregnant, and therefore they might need to have more abortions. If we can assure that they're not having abortions in the third fucking trimester or whatever, wherever we're going to draw the line, I don't have any problem with that. Even if these women as a choice of their career end up having to go into medical services more often than people in other careers do, I don't have a problem as long as it's nipping it early enough. Doctors actually end up ironically kind of needing more medical care because they deal with so many sick people. They're oftentimes more likely to contract diseases.
Well, what I was saying,
but it's not a perfect comparison because it's there's not a quote unquote life in the balance. Right. But if your choice of career results in you needing more medical care, so long as you're implementing that medical care at a point when you're not actually killing another human, I have no problem. I don't care if they need to go there 12 times a year.
But my point was with that I guess comparison was it would force everybody to be on the same train of thought that we are.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Well, I'm right.
But I don't think
they're wrong.
But realistically, I mean, yeah, no, we're right. Obviously, they're wrong. But I think realistically, that's not gonna happen, and that's why that we have.
It's definitely not.
They're connected in that way. That it's
because of the status quo, not because of how things should be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Exactly.
I get that. But I mean, fuck. Part of the whole point of making this podcast to our probably aggregate 30 viewers so far is
it that many?
I don't know how much overlap
We got 3 on the last one.
I saw ones that were high as like 20.
Yeah, I did.
So I'm assuming we have half
let's say
videos out.
Let's say we got
some
like,
of them 20, but somewhere between 3 and 20.
I was we got like five like returners, like 5 people that watch us, like yeah.
Main point is you kind of got to try to keep fighting the good fight, though, and you got to. I mean, social progress isn't achieved by, and fuck if I didn't just ally myself with progressivism, but it's not achieved by just sitting back and saying, well, I mean, that's the status quo.
Right.
People are always going to think that way, so well, why do we even bother saying it in the first place? Like, I do need to assert to any Christians that might happen to be listening to me, people who might be having thoughts along this lines, that if you're aborting something that is smaller than a clump that comes out during a woman's period, you're not ending a life.
Right.
And if you're engaging in a profession that makes it slightly more likely than average. I mean, during the break we were talking about my girlfriend's friend's whore friend who had a lot of abortions. But as long as she's doing that at a fairly timely manner, where she's not aborting things that literally fucking look like human beings,
right?
What's the problem? I don't see the issue with that at all. So I mean, the Christian right needs to kind of think this issue through,
yeah.
and part of the whole point of voicing your opinions about these kind of things on the podcast, and honestly probably more affectionately in our day-to-day lives, is trying to get that idea across to people that, like, really that's what you this is a life to you. This is like, there would be more fucking matter if you just slit my throat and I bled out on the carpet. There's more organism there.
Right.
Than there is from a zygote getting pulled.
But you'd be killing a life at that point.
All right, you drain a bit of blood into a bag, and I mean,
when you go to the doctors and they drain off some blood to do some blood tests,
there's more organic matter there than there is constituting the quote unquote person that you claim that has been murdered.
Yeah. Well, I guess the main moral of the podcast then is
don't kill children.
Pay for prostitutes. They need the money, and
tip them well too.
Tip them very well.
Like both the tip
also
and the tip.
Kill cells. Just get abortions. But within like the first couple months.
I'm sorry, I couldn't get. We can't end this quite yet because I didn't want to say.
Can I?
BoJack Horseman.
Okay.
The BoJack Horseman.
Is it gonna be quick? Cause I got a leak.
Yeah, it's gonna be real quick.
Okay, do it.
But BoJack Horseman, story that I'm not gonna cover right now, but hilarious, like Lindsay Lohan type character that they have in this story.
Oh yeah,
who's a dolphin,
yeah,
and she got like really she's like a pop star, and she got really fucking famous by putting out a song where she's just talking about like how great abortion is and how she gets abortions left and right, and like as she's singing, the backdrop is just like little aborted fetuses just like crisscrossing with each other, looking all happy and like dancing along with the fucking shit.
That, yeah.
We're perfectly okay with that. Peace.
It's a good wrap up.